us today to speak on grief and kind of tell us her story. Thanks for coming.
Sure.
Excited to have you. Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning, Lord, and we just praise you, Lord, and we give you all of the thanks and all of the glory, God, and all of our worship. You are just so worthy of it all, Father, and we just thank you for this time together to connect as moms before this Thanksgiving season, Lord, and we just pray that you'll give us hearts to hear what you want to speak to us this morning, Lord, through Lisa and her message. We just pray for a blessing over our morning and just a good time together. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you. Full disclosure, I go to the Eden Prairie campus.
Yeah.
And for years, I was at the Loring Park campus with Alicia and Catherine Wellborn. We all were on the initial team that started that campus, which is now Miracle City. But back in the day, it was just Loring Park. And so I have it's really fun for me to get to be with Alicia and Catherine, our old team. The band is back together. So anyway, I have a long history. I've gone to Waddell for 20 years. And normally on Tuesday mornings, we're not meeting today, which is why it's a blessing to be with you. But I teach the Tuesday morning women's Bible study at Eden Prairie called God's Great Reveal. And we're doing the book of John. And we have 140 women in our Bible study. Wow. So if I sound like I'm talking too loud, I'm used to projecting to a bigger group. So you can just sort of give me the, because I will tend to do that because my Tuesday voice is a louder voice. So I'm going to use my quieter Tuesday voice this morning. But anyway, I'm going to talk to you about grief because unfortunately, grief has been a defining meter in my life. I was a teenager who lost a parent, and then I grew up to be a parent who lost a teenager. So I have seen grief both as a child losing a dad and as a mother losing a son. And I will tell you just a little bit about my story because I really want to talk to you more about grief as it is something that will hopefully give you some wings to talk to people who are in grief, or if you are grieving yourself, maybe you'll connect to some of the things that are helpful to grievers. Because when you've been in it, you figure out quickly who the people are that say things that comfort you and who the people are that say things that become really damaging. And there's a scripture that I put on your sheet this morning from 1 Corinthians, and it basically says, with the comfort you've been given, comfort others. And that's the umbrella under which I wish to stand with you this morning. I am not I don't have a degree in counseling. I have a degree in advertising, which means I'm really good at promoting things, whether they're true or not. But I can do it. But I don't have any professional credentials to talk to you about this, but I have a lifetime of living it. As a child who lost a parent and as a parent who lost a child. So I do have, I think, a pretty good amount of foundation, and I feel pretty strongly that I can bring some tone and tenor to the story, let's say that. So as it relates to my original family, my mother was very young. You were talking about your dear friend this morning who was 40 years old with breast cancer. My mom was widowed at 41 with 4 kids who were between the ages of 15 and 8. And so that was a really early time to be raising a family all alone. And my dad died of leukemia, and it was a very, very quick death. We heard just before Thanksgiving that he was going in the hospital, and he died at the end of January. And we saw him exactly twice. And actually, my siblings only saw him once. I saw him twice because I got to go for my birthday. But back in the day, they wouldn't let children go into hospitals when people were in isolation. So my siblings got to see my dad on Christmas Day, and then I don't think they saw him again, and I saw him a week later because I have an early January birthday, and they allowed me, because I was turning 15, to go in the hospital and see him. So that was it. We saw him 2 times from the time he told us that he had leukemia, and then the next time it was at his funeral. So it was a really difficult season, and back in the day, and you don't know this because you're all way too young, but your mothers will agree with me. Catherine will stand here and witness. Catherine testified. Back in the day, we called it the C word. And we didn't talk about cancer. And you talked about it so freely this morning, and I'm thankful and I'm grateful, and we all are thankful and grateful, because it's a real thing. We need to talk about it. But back in that season, isn't that true? She's testifying with me. You called it the C word, and everybody was very hush-hush. People had a really hard time talking about the consequences of it, and it was a tough time to lose a dad, because nobody really felt comfortable saying anything to us. And so the whole experience of losing my dad versus the experience of losing my son were totally different, and it was based in a large part on culture. Culture is now welcoming grief. We now have decided it's valuable. We've now recognized, those of us that are believers, that the Bible talks about it ad nauseum. My goodness sakes, we do. I could go and go and go on that. I won't. I will bring a few things forward, but we spend chapters talking about people who've lost people. And we have the joy of seeing David lose a child and what that meant for him, even though that was partly due to a sin situation. We know that God was tender to him in that season. We see so many people losing children. It goes on. And we see them losing spouses and losing siblings. And the Bible is full of it, because life and death are part of what we have as a result of the garden, right? We were not born to die, we were born to live, but we die because of sin. And so we all have to be pretty comfortable with it. And we have to be comfortable with it in weird seasons. And so in the case of my son, there's a picture of my 4 children. The second picture there is my 4 kids, and that was taken on Christmas Day, the last time my kids were all together. Ryan died that summer. And he was just turning 16 in that picture. He had a January birthday, so he was shy of 16. And then that summer, he went on a trip with his school and died on a retreat. And that was a really tough situation, because the school didn't want to talk to us. And so to this day, it's been 16 years, there's a whole lot of things I don't know, because they decided that they didn't really want to talk about what happened. So talk about an unexpected story. And talk about a situation where you feel like you're living in a Lifetime original movie that you forgot to audition for. That is how I have felt, and that's how my husband and kids have felt. It's just been this really weird thing. And my middle daughter, who Alicia knows well, because Derek officiated her wedding last summer, she knows Ashley well. Ashley is a murder mystery addict. Yes. She watches everything. You name anything on Netflix, she's watched the whole series. And I know that came out of losing her brother. Yeah, and she is like, she's always texting me, okay, there's a new one. This one's really good. Okay. And I kind of appreciate her obsession, because I think that when something unexpected happens, we look for places to get the answers. And obviously we look to Scripture. But there are stories that even Scripture hasn't written, where we don't really know things. And so the murder mysteries, I think, have been kind of a little bit comforting for her. I think they kind of help her connect to other families that have questions about what happened, and where there's, where there's just answers that haven't been opened up and trails that haven't been perfectly forged. So we spent a couple of years trying to figure out what happened. We know certain things. There's certain things we don't know. But we have chosen to know 2 things. Ryan loved the Lord and was very interested in spiritual things, and so we know where he is. We know he's with my dad. We know that they have had a lot of fun together in heaven, and they never would have met any time earlier. So that brings me a lot of comfort. So certain days I'll think about that. But we have, as a family, walked through some things that most families don't walk through. And my girls have. Having lost a sibling is not normal. And losing a parent at a young age is also not normal. So if I feel like I'm not normal, I know I'm not. I mean, I just know that. I've always felt like my life is it doesn't play very well statistically. The number of people, I've never met another person, and I'm 63, I've been here a while. I have never met another person who lost a parent when they were a teenager and then turned around and lost a child. I've met a lot of women that have lost children. I'm in a grieving moms group, and they all live in Edina and Eden Prairie, and I know a lot of people. Even if you've heard of them in the paper, I might have met them, because we try really hard to reach out to the families who lose kids around here. But I don't know any of them that lost their parent when they were growing up. So that part is still challenging for me, because I have both. But what it's left me with is a lot to say on the subject of grief. And so I want to start by saying that grief is far more powerful and far more exhausting than most people will admit. And one of the things that happens to you as a griever is everybody around you wants you to be done about 30 minutes after the funeral. Generally speaking, the word closure, which I consider a 4-letter word, by the way, but a lot of people say, oh, she's got so much closure now. We've had the funeral. Yeah, they closed the casket. And now the work begins. You know, up until that funeral, those first few days or a week or 10 days, whatever that season is between the funeral, a lot of people come around and they bring food and they help. And then once that funeral's over, a lot of people go back to their lives. And you are just beginning your new life without your spouse, without your child, without your family member, and it is all new. And you really have to rewrite a script to figure out how you're going to do this again. And in the case of my children, Ryan was our oldest child and our only boy. So suddenly my 3 girls didn't have that big brother that they were used to both challenging them, threatening them, and playing around with them. They loved him. But my oldest daughter, Megan, she's in the wedding picture, she's the one holding all the kids because she's got all 3 children. Megan is now the oldest, and she was 14 when Ryan died, and I remember her saying to me, I don't want to be the oldest. Nobody wants to be the oldest. Like, well, thanks, I'm an oldest. She said, I don't want to be the oldest. And I said, well, good news. God didn't ask you to be the oldest. He asked Ryan to be the oldest, but he always asked you to be the oldest girl. And you're going to need to keep being the oldest girl, but you don't have to be the oldest child. I bring that story to you because I think it helps you see the complication of a family where there's loss. Because now everybody has to kind of move up. And I have struggled for 16 years. To this day, I struggle when people say, how many kids do you have? I always go, and that's a multiple choice question. It is. It's multiple choice. In a story like this, I freely told you I had 4 children because you were giving me permission to explain. But when I'm at Target, and back in the day when the girls were in high school and I had $400 worth of Cheez-Its in my, in the basket, you know how it looked. I mean, people would look at you like, how many kids do you have? And you know what I'd always say? Like, how many kids do you have? And I'd always say, I have no idea. I'm feeding half of Eden Prairie. Yes. And I used to say that because it kept me from crying. Yeah. Because it was like, I'd rather make people laugh than make myself cry. So I figured out some funny things to say. I have no idea. People keep coming and eating in my pantry. I have lost count. And then they would think that was amusing. But I had that way protected my heart from having to say, well, I have 4, but one's in heaven. And, and my husband and I really have found that since Ryan died, we kind of have 2 categories of people. People who knew us in a season when they knew we lost, which would be all the people at Eden Prairie, Wooddale, that we knew when he died. And he was actually a student custodian at Wooddale at that time. So he was on staff and he knew Pastor Leith and all the pastors, because like he said, I emptied their waste baskets. So he said, I do know them all. I've emptied every one of their waste baskets. But in that season, I mean, those people obviously knew the story and knew that we'd lost our son, and so it wasn't a secret to them. But as we have moved on in our lives and made new friends and kept the old, there's a lot of new people that don't know your story. And so I kind of personally have, like I said, a kind of multiple choice approach to, if this is somebody I'm never going to see again, I have 3 adult daughters. But if this is someone who's going to be in my life or somebody who looks like they're going to be around us a little bit, then I will be a little more forthcoming, but maybe not the first time I meet them. And that's one of the ways that I have protected myself, because it gets really hard. It's a long story. It's not just an easy story anymore to say, oh, we have 4 kids. Because if I say that and I tell them, oh, my 3 girls are married and one has kids and then they're like, well, you said you had 4. Because most people are smart enough, if they listen, they hear, I thought you said you had 4 kids. Oh, I did say that. Our 4th is our oldest, and he lives in heaven. Oh, well, what happened?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there we go. This is a new subject. So nobody cares really about your family. What they really care about is what happened. I'm sorry to say that. I'm being truthful. This is Truthful Tuesday. here at the Edina campus, because we're going to tell the truth. I'm not going to sit here and just give you platitudes. I'm going to be truthful. Most people, the first question they ask you is what happened. And I'm going to say that, don't be that person. You don't know what happened, do you? What if they were killed in a car accident and every time you bring it up, you bring them to tears? The best thing to say is, I am so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry you've lost. And you can ask about the person. How old were they? How old was your son? Tell me about him. When my husband went back to work, he was very fortunate that at the time Ryan died, his boss was appalled that this had happened, and he had deep compassion. And even though he worked for United Health, which nobody thinks of as deep compassion, nobody, this particular boss walked through the line. We were at Wooddale at the funeral. He came up to me and he goes, what can I do for you? And I said, let him stay home. He's devastated. He goes, I've got that. And so Tim, this was not policy, for company policy, you get 3 days off. That's the compassion of United Health and every other big employer, by the way. That's how they do it. But he called him and said, Tim, let us know when you're coming back. My opinion is you should take off the month of August and come back for Labor Day. And everybody in the department will figure it out. Don't come back. Well, talk about a gift from heaven. Yeah. So in that season, we took advantage of it, and he stayed home and really started to deal with his grief. But as soon as he went back to work, the first person that came up to him said, hey, I heard your son died. What happened? Oh my. And it was someone in another department. And he said, before I tell you how Ryan died, I would really like to tell you how Ryan lived. And I loved that he said that. And I stole it from him and started saying that because I thought, what a beautiful way to flip the script. What a beautiful way to let the griever share what they're grieving instead of having to answer to you like you're the police. And so the first thing I want to say to you is, in grief, remember that there's tender hearts and profundity of story. And you may not know the story. If you know that the grandma had a heart attack suddenly, you can say, I am so sorry, what a shock. And let them tell you what happened. And even if you already know, let them tell you. Part of their learning and part of the way they deal with grief is telling you the story 144 times. And you could be a gracious listener. And if they need to tell you again, and if they need to tell you again, be gracious. That is how their brain accepts it. These kind of stories aren't really acceptable. We are not supposed to lose parents when the parents are still parenting. And we're not supposed to lose kids when we're still parenting them. And so our brains are really not trained to take on tragedy like that. And so one of the ways we learn it is we say it, and we say it, and we say it, and eventually, you know what? We start to believe it. Because in the first days of grief, it's just a story out there. It's like Dateline, 2020, ABC News. You have a narrative that you are repeating, but you can't really believe it's you. Because your heart just can't take it. And by the way, aren't we thankful that God gives us so much protection on our heart that we can't accept it? He almost puts a sheet that's like an Instagram filter that comes over you and doesn't let you attach to it entirely. It's, part of it's adrenaline, and part of it is just this disbelief that this terrible thing could have happened to you. And so when you say it over and over and over and over, you start to believe it. And you start to get some traction in understanding it. And so that's something I want you to really know. If you meet a griever and they say, oh, did I tell you what happened to my mom? And you're like, well, I was at the funeral. Say, I need you to hear it. You need to tell me again. Or just recognize that you're helping their brain learn. And you're helping them figure out how to go through the steps. Because it is a really difficult thing to begin to unpack. And in the family constellation, which is the number of kids you have, those kind of questions are really, really hard. How many kids you have. Those are normal questions. People that ask that all the time. How many kids do you have? How many grandkids do you have? They're normal questions, but for grievers, they're tender questions. And so if you don't know someone's grieving and they make a joke like I do, like, oh, I don't know, 28 kids showed up last Friday to my house. And I fed them all. I have no idea which ones I gave birth to. I would say things like that just because it was easier for me than it was to sit there and try to pull things apart. And so another thing about grief is that it lasts way longer, and this is a clinical truth. This isn't just my experience. Clinicians will say that if you lose a spouse, a parent, or a deep, close friend, the grief cycle, and this is providing everybody who's pretty healthy and has a pretty good constitution, is 2 to 3 years. So for 2 to 3 years, you're going to be in powerful grief. Now, that cycle changes if it's a child. They say that 3 years is really the earliest they begin to deal with it, and 5 years is a little more normal. So at 5 years, you should just begin to sort of kind of almost feel like yourself. Sort of kind of almost at 5 years. And I would say for me, I was functional at 5 years, but not at a place where I wouldn't still tear up. And even at 16 years, it doesn't take much. And sometimes it's music, and sometimes it's, any number of things can trigger those memories. And sometimes you don't even know what the memories are. You just hear something in an elevator, and it's like, why am I feeling this tsunami come over me? And that's what I call it, a grief tsunami. When all of a sudden you're just doing life and whoosh, you have a wave of grief that comes over you. It's just part of our memory banks, what's in there. Certain smells, certain sounds, certain colors, certain things can trigger a host of things that we experienced when that person was with us. And your grieving friends will go through that. They may not have the language to tell you that that's how they're experiencing life, but I promise you, certain TV shows, certain music scores, I could give you 14 things that this quickly always make me think of Ryan. The first one is Casting Crowns, because when he was 13 years old, I took him to see Casting Crowns at the Excel Energy Center, and he goes, Mom, is this your first concert? And I said, no, that was Bob Seger, Night Moves, 1978. This is your first concert. Kind of a cute story, but it's true. He really thought he was dragging me out for the first time, which tells you what a boring life I was leading as a mother. He had never seen me go to a concert. He thought that, Mark Hall and the guys were my first time out of the house, so yay me. But I actually had a life before that, but just hadn't had a chance to share it with you. So, anyway, and so it was Bob Seger. Sorry, I'm from Detroit. Bob Seger's from Detroit. Tim and I saw him on our 7th wedding anniversary. We sat down to dinner, and there was Bob Seger. Felt like a full circle moment for me. Like, I saw you in my first concert. I didn't tell him that. Normally I would. I am that person. I am that creepy person. But that particular day, I let it go. I don't always. A lot of times I would have been, hi, I know you don't know me, but I know you. I have 4 of your albums, and I know where you live. And whatever. Anyway, back to grief. Well, all these things are part of it, right? Mm-hmm. Because our life goes into like snowflakes. There's all these little edges of everything. And that's really what grief brings to us, is living on these new edges. You keep forming new edges. You form new memories that the person is not part of. And that's been the story of our lives the last 16 years with our children, that we're forming all these new memories. We have 3 weddings that we've had now, and 3 grandchildren, and 1 more that's coming. And no, it's not Ashley, it's Caroline. I know, she was looking at me. No, Caroline. So, yep, we have a new one coming. And all these new messages and all these new memories don't include that original person. The person who made me a mom is never here on Mother's Day anymore. And so Mother's Day and Father's Day, frankly, I personally think they suck. And they have for a long time, because back to high school. I hated Father's Day as soon as my dad died. Because you would go to these things like Mom's Day out in college. I was in a sorority, and we always had Dad's Weekend, and we had Mom's Weekend. And those of us that didn't have a dad or didn't have a mom, there were about 4 or 5 of us, we were always like, trying to figure out what to do with ourselves. Because everybody else's dad was there, everybody else's mom was there. And then there were a few of us that were like, hey, we'll do cleanup, or whatever. Right. Because you don't think about that if your family's all intact. But when people start to leave you, when you start losing moms and dads, and all of you will at some point, those kind of memories are difficult. But when you're a kid doing it, you're doing all the dads with donuts and moms with mermaids or whatever they have at school. And those kids who don't have the mom or don't have the dad really feel uncomfortable. And I've noted that recently most of the schools now call it Special Person Day. And that was not my experience growing up, believe me. We had our special people were our parents. But now they let you kind of pick who you want to bring. And I think some of that's really sensitive and helpful. Because there are a lot of kids who, even if their parents aren't dead, they may not be able to reach both parents or pick the one that's supposed to come that day due to their lifestyle. And so sometimes that's helpful that they can make their own decision about who the special person is. Again, our culture has become a little more friendly. Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about things that people said that didn't go over well. Let me start by this. If you talk to a grieving person, never start your sentence with the words "at least." Well, at least Aunt Beth isn't suffering anymore. No, everybody else is, though.
Yeah.
Now, if they say to you, well, you know, Aunt Beth suffered for so long, and I'm so glad not to see her suffer, of course you can agree. Oh, I bet that's a relief. She did suffer a long time. It was a hard, long season, wasn't it? You can agree with them, but don't ever tell them how they're supposed to think. Because when you say that, at least she's not suffering anymore, it sounds like, well, you know, story's over, everybody's happy again. No, they're not. Everybody's just starting. Now we're dealing with part B. First we had to get Aunt Beth through this medical crisis, and now we have to have life without Aunt Beth. And so the at least thing, it isn't just that. It's, well, and this one, oh my gosh, this one made me so unhappy, and so many people said this to me. Aren't you glad you have 3 other girls? Oh, I am. I'm delighted, but I also had a son that I lost. Can we talk about that? Listen, children are not snow tires. They are not interchangeable or exchangeable. But I will tell you that even mothers with kids who are a little older than you and have little bigger kids were the ones that would say that to me. But at least you have 3 other daughters. You had 4 kids. You know, you overpopulated. So now at least you've come down to a more reasonable number, is how I heard it. Like you shouldn't have had that many kids anyway. That's how it sounded. Now I know they didn't mean that. But understand something. Grieving people are very tender, and they're looking for a fight. I mean, we're looking for a fight because we're already hurt. It doesn't take much to get the punching bag going. Like we're already just feeling it. And so when you say things like that that are not affirming to us and embracing of our pain, it sounds like you're sort of criticizing us. And so I was like, well, how many kids do you think I should have? No, I'm just saying, but you know, you have other children. It's not like it was your only child. Oh, okay, so if it was my only child, you'd feel bad about it. But because I have 4 children, it's only a 25% loss. Okay, I get it. Now, did they mean that? Probably not. But can I talk about insensitive? So you don't say that. What you say is, this has got to be really hard on your family. Or, how are your children doing without their brother? How are you and Tim doing without your son? So important to ask people how they're doing. And you can say, I know it changes all the time. How are you doing today? How has today been? Tell me about your status today. Or tell me how the week has gone. Was Tuesday okay? How'd you do Wednesday? And when you ask those questions with a little more texture, how was this morning? How'd you do this morning before you got to church? How did you do this weekend? I know this was the birthday weekend. How did you do? That helps them know how to answer you. Because when you say, how are you doing? I'd be like, I'm breathing. I'm here. I got dressed. My makeup is relatively standard, you know. I mean, that's like all you can think about is the functions. So one of the things I do, and I want to share this with you as a tip, a little pro tip. If you have a friend who has lost a child, or a parent they were really close to, or a sister, put it in your iPhone on the day that they've died, put that date in there, and then hit all day, and then put repeats every year. So I have in my phone, on any given month, multiple children that have died. And I can tell you who they all are, who their moms and dads are, and their birthdays, and their lost dates are in my phone. So that when their day comes up, I don't have to sit there and worry about, I don't want to miss it when it's her day, because my phone reminds me. My phone is helpful. I know we can complain about social media and we can complain about our iPhones, but for me, it's been a really good grief tool. It helps me remember when those children's lost dates are. So last week, one of the moms in my Bible study had a daughter that was born still, And her 22nd birthday was this week, and so I went right up to her and said, I know today's Hannah's day, and she fell apart. And that's okay, but she was so glad that I remember. She goes, do you have it in your phone? And I go, well, yeah. I can't possibly memorize all of these dates. But I can possibly comfort her with the comfort I've been given if I remember when those really tough days are. Mother's Day and Father's Day, the kid's birthday, and the lost date. Those 4 days are just dead zones for parents that have lost kids. So when it's Mother's Day and your girlfriend has had a still, or your girlfriend has had a child that's lost, would you please recognize that she is ready to jump that day? Mother's Day does not feel good to people that are hurting moms. It actually feels like sort of like somebody's put a spotlight on your pain. Yeah. It's Mother's Day. Everyone's getting gifts and going out to dinner and bragging about their bouquets. And you're home thinking, I just hope I get through the day. So on Mother's Day, every year since we lost Ryan, I decide if I go to church or not. Some years I go because I'm in a good mood, I'll go. Some years I'm like, take the kids, I'm not going. My Mother's Day gift is I'm watching online or not watching at all. Sometimes I don't even want to hear them talk about Mother's Day. And it's okay. We have the same decision on Father's Day. It's Tim's choice. You want to go, you can go. You want to stay home, you stay home. You're the boss, your day. And that's how we survive. Now, that might sound really strange and funny to you, but we have learned that part of our grief journey is setting our own rules. And nobody gave us a playbook. There's no guidebook. Nobody hands you anything that says, you know, like when you have your baby in the hospital and they send you home with a leaflet, like that's really going to help. Oh, here's a trifold that's going to tell you how to do this. Oh, wonderful. I'm sure I can fold a diaper now. Great. But there's really not very much in there that they can teach you. You kind of have to learn on the job. And the same thing's true with grief. You can read all the books you want. I read 14 books on grief the year that Ryan died. I liked exactly one of them. And you know what I liked? I'll tell you. It's not a grief book. The best book I read that year was written by former Senator, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget his name, John Edwards. His wife, Elizabeth Edwards, wrote a book about the loss of their 16-year-old son. And it was so great. It moved me and it buoyed me and it left me in like places of utter joy. And somebody bought it for me that said, hey, this isn't a Christian book, but this woman can write like nobody's business. I want you to have it. And she gave it to me, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I thought I'll read it. I couldn't get off the couch for like 2 days till I finished this book. It was so good. And she wrote 2 books. The first one was called Amazing Grace, and I still haven't read that, Amazing Graces. And this book was called, I'm going to forget. Somebody's have to Google it. It's one word. I don't remember. I never remember the name of this book. It's a hard word like persevere or something like that. Somebody can Google it, Elizabeth Edwards. Right after she published this book, she died of breast cancer. I don't know if you know anything about her life, but it's all in the book. And she had 2 more children after her son died, and she was in her 40s and did all kinds of IVF and thought that maybe that's why. She ended up with stage 4 breast cancer when her new kids were like 3 and 5 and died. And she died literally when they published the book. But she's raw, she's fabulous. She tells you every single thing about her life all the way back to when she was a kid. It was riveting. And mostly what I attached to was her mom heart. I loved her honesty. I loved her rawness. I loved that she wasn't afraid to call it like it was. And she didn't give us platitudes. And she didn't, say all the dumb things. And so the grief books, I thought they were awful in general. They were so platitudinal. Choose happiness, choose joy. No, how about choose survival? And how about choose Jesus? Because that's all you got to choose, right? You choose Jesus and you choose survival. And every day you get up and you try to do a little more than you did the day before. And you have a lot of days when you fall apart and realize you're back at square one, and it's okay. Because grief it doesn't move forward, it kind of moves like this. It's more like an enigma or an amoeba, because it's tracked by all these other things going on in your life. The memories that you go to with your kids, you go to their concert, you go to their game, and you think he should be here. He should be an uncle to these 3 adorable grandkids we have. He should be. And then you realize, no, he should be right where he is. God is tender, he's merciful, and he's good all the time. And so even when I do the what ifs, and now he'd be 32 now, I wonder what he'd look like. My youngest daughter, who's very techie, I'm looking at Alicia, she's too. I said something about it. I kind of wonder what he'd look like. She goes, well, let's ask ChatGPT. And so it was a really frightening moment for me because I'm like, how is this going to go? So she loaded a bunch of pictures in and asked ChatGPT to make him 32. Well, he was so handsome. I loved it. They do that on the crime shows, where the age of progress, right?
Yeah.
So at first I was terrified. I thought, if this doesn't go well, I'm going to be really upset. Because I gave birth to him and he better be coming out looking okay. But it ended up being really sweet. Honestly, I have the pictures in my phone. Because I just thought, this is okay. This is a tool we've been given. It's okay. It's not really him, it's him with some advancements, but it's okay. So anyway, that was kind of a funny thing that we experienced. I wish I should have remembered to bring another picture. Jack is my son-in-law that's married to Caroline, who's the bride in this picture. So Jack is the groom in that picture. His mother has a fond appreciation for art. And one of the things that she did when my other two girls were married is she has an artist that she knows who she had paint a watercolor picture of our entire family at the wedding with Jesus and Ryan in the picture. It's unbelievable. So I have one from Megan's wedding, one from Ashley's wedding, and she's now having one done from this wedding that we're going to get shortly. And every time I put that picture out, you cannot believe the conversations I've had. You can't believe the conversations because all of a sudden everybody's going, wait a minute, who's the guy in the tunic? They have no faces. They're just circles with hair and beautifully clothed. And all the body sizes are right in proportion. She's a remarkable artist, but she doesn't do the faces, which is really, for me, at my age, kind of a joy. But anyway, it's kind of sweet. You can tell immediately who everybody is because they're so perfectly proportioned in the pictures. It's identical to the real picture with this insert. And both of our dogs that have left are in the picture. So cute. And she specializes in grieving families. She only does Christian families that want Jesus. You don't want Jesus, you don't want her. And she puts your loved one in with Jesus and your pets to give you a completed picture of your story. And so we have these two big ones, and we're getting the third one. And like I said, I've shared them with people who've come into my home, and I cannot tell you the amazing conversations we've had. Because it just changes their view, like, oh yeah, he'd be here, and Jesus, all of a sudden it opens their mind up to seeing the story in a sweeter way. The tragedy suddenly becomes heavenly. And that lost picture becomes a little clearer when they realize, once again, here was another family event that we didn't have Ryan to celebrate. And speaking of weddings, many of you have probably been to weddings in the last, I'm going to say 10 years, where we've done the memory tables. Have you seen those? All three of my girls chose to do that. It wasn't my idea. I said, it's your wedding, you pick. But they really wanted to have a picture of their brother. And we had a picture of my dad. And then in the case of their husbands, we had people in their family that had been lost. And the first time, and it probably was 10 or 12 years ago, the first time I went to a wedding where I saw that, I was really taken by it, and I didn't know what to think. I just didn't know what to think. I was like, oh my goodness, because it was just a surprise. But as I thought about it over the next several days, I thought, that was kind of brilliant. Everybody's thinking about the people that aren't there. And when you give them a place to visit, not a shrine, not an altar, just a picture and some sweet words, those who are celebrating from above is what ours said. And just a reminder, it's kind of like it sort of takes the air out. Like these are the people that we kind of thought were going to be here when we got married. These were the people we kind of thought were going to be at the head table. And so for our family, when we did that, I felt like that really was helpful. It was helpful to the cousins. It was helpful to our close family friends who watched Brian grow up. It felt like everybody had a chance, like I said, to kind of exhale. And so I share that with you because obviously you're all married and you're not needing this advice for yourself. But as you go forward with celebrations, when people have left that should have been there, think about those kind of things. They're very honoring. And they can give other people who come a place to feel like they're thinking what you're thinking, but it's more comfortable to talk about it when you've given them a physical permission to do that. The other thing I want to talk to you about is when families have loss, it's important to help them honor the person that died. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. I mentioned using your iPhone as a way of texting them or sending just a little card or something to tell them, I know this is a really hard day. But it's also helping them, saying to her sometime, what do you do? Saying to a mom, what do you do when you are needing to remember your child? And ask them what they do. Some families do birthday parties for the family member that's lost. We typically don't anymore. Our girls, we kind of let them run the show. When the very first Christmas that Ryan died, which was the Christmas after that picture you saw, I asked the girls if they wanted to have Ryan's stocking out. And they said, absolutely. And I was like, really? Okay. Because I remember not knowing what to do about that. So I asked the girls and asked him, and they all said yes. And so for about 3 or 4 years, his stocking was out. And then eventually the girls were like, yeah, probably not. Because by that point, they were kind of at an age where we were way out of the Santa Claus phase, even when this started. It was more just the visual. But then they kind of decided they were ready to not have that anymore. But those kind of things are really tricky for families. And so when your friends are going through these kind of things, it might be helpful to ask questions like that. What are you going to do at the holidays to honor them? Or have you thought about something you might want to do to remember your husband or to remember your child? Or because they may not have even known that they ought to think about doing that. So that's a way to be really helpful, is to encourage them and then say, well, what if, and give them some thoughtful ideas of things that they might do. Because I have to tell you, this is a really awkward space. And like I said, there's no grief books that are helpful. Don't recommend any of them. I recommend none. I've never had any of them that I've given to other people. I don't give people grief books because I don't think you really want to hear either books that were so maudlin and so sad that they were almost too difficult to get through, or they were too platitudinal, like you're taking a class. And this is your life. It's not academia, it's your life. And so really what you want to do is just help them stay in their faith. And that's what I would say is the most important thing, is to, when you say to a griever, I'm praying for you, don't say that if you don't mean it. Really mean it, or say to them, what am I praying for you about this week? What's happening that I can specifically pray for? And maybe they're going to be meeting with somebody that, like a funeral director, or maybe there's been a situation with an estate with a parent where they have to go clean the house or deal with an attorney or something. When those things are revealed to you, you've got a place to start with the Lord on their behalf. And as you pray, the Lord will open up other doors of things to pray for. But people that are grieving, they really need the Lord more than anything. The grieving books are not going to do it, trust me. You need the Lord. You need a faith base. And so when you have people in your life who don't know the Lord, what an opportunity to share the goodness of Christ and to say, nobody knows grief like Jesus. He is the man who was described by Isaiah to be a man well acquainted with sorrows. And I found that to be a very, very blessed prophecy of the Lord, because I needed him to be very well acquainted with sorrow. I needed him to know my pain. I needed him to know that I could trust my heart with him, because he knew pain. And as a human, he did. Lazarus was not the only person that died in his world. It's just the one that we get to read about where he brings him out of the tomb. But in that story, he cried with those sisters, even though he knew he was going to raise him. He cried because he saw their tears. And he cried because he had his own tears. Lazarus was his dear friend. Lazarus, Mary, and Martha are one of the only families in the Gospels we read about more than one time. We meet them in a couple situations. That tells you they were tender to Jesus. Jesus loved them, spent time with them, chose to see them more than one time. There's the people he ran out of the crowd and, well, okay, we've had enough of you. We're going out, going in the woods and hoping you don't find me. He would go off, or brushing the dust off their feet and moving along. But Mary, Martha, and Lazarus meant a lot to Jesus. He spent time with them. And so when Lazarus died, it truly broke his heart. I was a dear friend to him and a sibling to his dear female friends. And so his tears were genuine, even though shortly thereafter he raised him. And even though, as fully God as he was, knew he was going to raise him, It shows you his humanity. That in a moment of grief, he grieved. Jesus wept. Everybody says, oh, it's the shortest verse in the Bible. It's the shortest verse in the Bible, but it's one of the most powerful. Because it shows you a Jesus who takes your tears very seriously. It shows you a Jesus who cares about the things that have come so powerfully into your story. And for me, it isn't just the shortest verse in the Bible. Yeah, I went to Christian school. I know all the answers to the Christian school, answers. God, Satan, Jesus, redemption, justification, sanctification. I graduated with those words. That was Bibles. Every Bible class, those were the words. You knew you were going to go with sanctification, justification, and righteousness. You're going with Jesus. You're going with the Apostle Paul or possibly Elijah. And you're going to get through school on those answers. That is your Christian school cheat sheet right there. And what's the longest verse and what's the shortest verse? We know them. The shortest verse is John 11:35, Jesus wept. And the longest verse is Psalm 119, and it's in the middle of 119, 100 and something. Forgot it right now, but it's in 119. Anyway, we used to know these things because it mattered in Christian school. But for me personally, Jesus wept has become helpful. It's become something that I've wept with him, knowing that his tears are, that he catches our tears in bowls and holds them. And grieving moms, really, we are our own flotation devices. We have enough tears that we have shed to really have a lot to look forward to in heaven when those bowls are poured out and those prayers are recovered. Well, I actually wanted to give you a couple minutes to ask questions if you had one. Yes?
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing first.
Sure.
And I'm so sorry for
Thank you.
This has been very helpful. And I was just thinking about, I have one question. So you were talking about the length of grief,
Mm-hmm.
But how about reoccurring loss? So if you have had multiple, so I have a sister who had 5 miscarriages,
Oh my goodness.
and one was like almost a stillbirth,
Oh dear.
and so doesn't have kids, and 5, so many. And so it's just, how does that affect the length of grief? And do you have any comments on that?
Well, I would say that from the time she was first pregnant with baby number 1 to today, she's probably got a very long season of grief ahead of her, because every one of those pregnancies was a child that God took and has rescued to heaven. She's got a full basketball team waiting for her. Whether they're all boys or girls, I don't know, but she's got 5 children waiting for her. And those babies were planned. They were planned by God. They have value, and their lives are meaningful. And so her season of grief is probably going to be very long, and I will tell you that if she's blessed to have her own baby, it's going to start all over again, because she's going to live through the complication of worrying about that child living and worrying about her worthiness as a mom to raise that child. Very, very common. And what you want to do is just remind her that she stands under the authority of God himself. Motherhood is an authority that we have. I'm so sorry. That's a hard story. Yeah. And she has your babies to enjoy. And that's a blessing to her. It really is. Even though you think, oh, that's really hard, they're my kids, they're not her kids, they're her babies to enjoy. They are her nieces, and that is a blessing to her. That helps her stay grounded to her motherhood and her desire for motherhood. And don't ever feel guilty that you had babies before her. That was God's plan, not yours. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how I should phrase this question. In the circumstance of the loss of a child, I'm curious about, I have no idea about the statistics on this, and you're living proof of the sanctification of marriage and the strength of the Lord being around the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
But statistically speaking, I have heard that when the loss of a child happens, often what follows is divorce.
Yep, in 80% of cases, families will divorce within 5 years. 80% of the time. Some statistics say 90, but I usually say 80 because I like to be hopeful.
Like I said, you're living proof of
Right.
working through that.
Mhm.
What are
as us being mothers and perhaps having circumstances like this happen in either our own lives or friends' lives, how can we show up in that way to be able to support them and support their marriage too, so that they can?
Well, I will say this, and this may sound like you would be a little shocked to hear this, but I mean, I guess maybe you figured out I'm shocking. But anyway, when we meet with couples who've lost a child, one of the first things we say to them is, and there's a family that lives right around the block from this church that we've met with for 10 years now. They lost a 16-year-old. They have been to church here a couple times, but they're really angry with God. But anyway, the first time they came into our home, I said to them, you do know that statistically, 8 couples out of 10 will divorce in 5 years. You won't be that couple. We won't let you. Now, you might think, what a graceful thing to say on day one. No, I personally, this is just me, I think you got to kick the enemy in the pants on day one.
Yeah.
Let him know what he wants to take. You know what he wants? He wants your family. You know what he wants? He wants your marriage. So the first thing you got to do is like flash him with the truth. We know what you want to do. You want to take this family down. But guess what? We're not going to let you. We're going to pray over you. We're going to pray with you. We're going to meet with you. And we are going to hold you together as best as we can and hold you accountable to each other. And so I would say the first thing is not to be afraid of that statistic, but to see that as a foe and to say, we're fighting this for you. Because you can fight on your knees. And you do. You have to fight on your knees for these families. They are in a lot of pain. And if they had a child who was sick, they went through a whole bunch of stuff before that child died. And if they had an accident or a medical crisis, I mean, all the moms I know, their stories are different. But some of them have ended up in lawsuits. Some of them have ended up on CNN. Some of them have ended up in all kinds of stories over what happened to their child. And because these things sometimes play out very uniquely down the road, you have a role to play as their friend to be on your knees for them. Pray for the sanctity of their marriage. Pray for their other children's grief. All of my girls have been in grief counseling. Tim and I have been in grief counseling. I mean, we've done the thing. We've worked really hard. And we haven't done everything perfectly. Do not hear that. I mean, my girls would stand up here and say, well, and then there was a time, because they're normal. And they would tell you that we did not do everything right. And I would never, ever try to paint that picture. But I will tell you we've been intentional and we fought super hard. And I would say that that's your job for someone else. Fight super hard on your knees for them. Because that is exactly what Satan wants. He takes a child out of a family. He knows he's got an 80% chance of knocking those people into the divorce court. And you know why? Because mom and dad won't grieve the same way. And that's what we told this couple in Edina. We said, you know, you're going to grieve with the mom's heart and you're going to grieve with the dad's heart. Certain things are going to break your heart that don't break hers. Certain things are going to break her heart that don't break yours. So get over that part of it. Stand together and grieve together and support each other's different grief. And so my husband had a great prayer. He prayed right after this happened that on his good days and my good days and his bad days and my bad days would not be the same. And the Lord honored that. So he'd walk in from work and go, oh boy, this is not going well. I can tell from your face. Go upstairs, I'll figure this out. And then the next couple days he'd come home and I'm like, oh, you look like you need to go upstairs. Yeah. And so we just kind of started reading each other and figuring out when those days were when you might want to make a trip to the mall. Maybe you need to go out and do this. And we just started kind of learning how to support each other, which usually meant protecting time alone, protecting their alone time. Because for a while, it's like you can't sit there and just sob in front of your kids because the thing the kids say is, well, don't you like being a mom to us? Of course I do, but I like being a mom to him too. You know, the kids, they see it differently. It's okay, but they do. So you kind of have to go a little stealth on some of that stuff. So I kind of learned when they were in school, that was my time to get most of my tears out. And when he was at the gym or he would run or do whatever he needed to do or go play golf, do something to be out of the house and have some fresh air and some time. And you really have to do it. You have to take care of yourself. And then you have to hydrate too. That's the other thing. People get very dehydrated in grief. They cry a lot and you get dehydrated. And so one of the things you really want to do, especially in that first 2 weeks, make sure they have water bottles at home and bring water bottles when you come to visit them. Bring paper products. They cry a lot. They need toilet paper. Kleenex and paper towel because people come in the house and use the toilet way more than they're used to it, so they run out of toilet paper faster. They cry a lot, so they go through a lot of Kleenex. And the paper towel is just, just to help clean up or whatever. So that's a thing you can bring. If you don't want to bring flowers, bring paper products. They're very appreciated. And water. They need water. Everybody's got to stay hydrated. It's exhausting, truly. Yeah.
For my parents who are walking through end of life with their parents, my grandmother has Alzheimer's, and so it's a difficult passing because it's so slow.
Right.
And she's gone. I mean, she's gone.
Well, she's not who you knew.
The grandmother and the mother that they all know, she doesn't know them.
Right.
So they've grieved it. Oh, I don't know. Mommy's just changing your sister. So how do you, I know that the funeral itself will be a very final, I think, grief in that. But is there a way to help kind of walk through some of that grief for my parents that are very much grieving her while she's still here?
Yeah, that's, they call Alzheimer's the long goodbye. That's kind of what most of the hospice people call it. Because you have said goodbye as soon as they stop knowing who you are. And as soon as they live in their own little world, where their own little world doesn't consist of their spouse, if they're alive, their children, their grandkids, all those people start to become outside of that circle that is now their brain. And there's a lot of goodbyes that go on before you say the final goodbye. And I think the most important thing to do is acknowledge that. My grandma died of Alzheimer's too, and my mom now has dementia. So I'm really walking through this with her. And you have to be very honest about the season you're in with all the people around them. Well, I miss when grandma used to. I loved it when she could. And you start talking about it in the past tense, because truthfully it is in the past tense. She's here, but she's not who she was. And so that phase 1 of the goodbye is her not being her. And then phase 2 is her not being on earth. But honestly, when my grandma died of Alzheimer's, I wasn't that sad because I'd had 7 years of watching her leave, and my grief came earlier than that.
We're at the end. I'm going to close us in prayer. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this time to hear from Lisa and just her story of walking through grief with both her dad and her son, Lord, and just to see your faithfulness to their family through all of that, God, and just how you are not wasting this grief, that you are using it in the lives of so many families, Lord, that are walking through grief themselves or that have people in their lives that are walking through grief. And we just pray, Lord, that as we walk through grief or as those around us, close ones in our lives, go through things, Lord, that you will remind us of your message to us in ways to be helpful and ways to be supportive, Lord. And may we just be good intercessors for those that are in need, Lord, that we truly will just fight on our knees for our family, for our friends, and for those around us, Lord. We just thank you once again for the message from Lisa, and we pray for continual healing over her family, Lord, and they continue to walk through grief throughout their lives. We just pray for just this Thanksgiving season, Lord. Help us each to just have thankfulness in our hearts and to trade in any grumbling or complaining for thankfulness, Lord, as there's just so much in our lives that we have to be thankful for. And so help us to keep that in mind and just go before us during this season. And I just thank you for your goodness to us. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you,
Oh, you're
Lisa.
welcome.
Very awesome.